Thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen, to this latest Emerging Threats Group video. In this video, I'll be testing out our circa 1991 US Navy Joint Carrier Battle Group against Soviet bombers. The Soviet bombers will be from that era as well, and it will be Backfires, Badgers and Bears. It will be set in September 1991 in the Northeast Atlantic. So to test how a Gulf War era US Navy carrier battle group fares against a USSR bomber raid. It will consist of Tu-22M Backfires, Tu-16 Badgers and Tu-95 Bears. In this variation of the scenario, the US Navy will only have limited assets that are actually airborne to defeat the incoming attack. This is to stimulate the US not having great intelligence, and the Soviets may be using deception tactics to throw off the US Navy carrier battle group, and therefore let's imagine, for example, quite a few of its units are actually doing other taskings. This will be simulated by most of the aircraft being on maintenance. However, there will be certainly some Tomcats and some Hornets airborne to defeat the incoming raid. In this hypothetical battle, the Soviet Union has overrun the northern part of Norway and many of the air bases there, and Iceland, however, does remain in NATO's hands. So we'll go down the units. We do have our two Nimitz-class nuclear-powered carriers. In this case, we have the Theodore Roosevelt, and we also have the Dwight D. Eisenhower. We have one battleship, the USS Missouri, two Ticonderoga-class cruisers, one USS Long Beach, which is a nuclear-powered cruiser. That is the only change from the video which we saw the 1991 force get destroyed by the 2030 force. So we have changed out the nuclear-powered cruiser for this one. This is a slight variation of the original Long Beach. It does have a couple of extra features on board, including a longer range RIM 67 Charlie SM2 ER Block 2 SAMs. We do also have a Leary class CG, one Early Burke class, which is a Flight 1 destroyer, two Spruance class destroyers, a USS Kidd, which is a Kidd class destroyer. In this case, I actually think it's USS Scott we're using in this case. We have two Alva Harrod Perry frigates, and also two older frigates as well. In fact, I don't even think they're classed as guided missile frigates, just normal frigates. And we have two supply ships. Our air wing, I believe, is totally unchanged from the last scenario. As you can see, there's quite a lot of aircraft here. We've got almost 50 Tomcats and about 60 Hornets. However, as I say, most of these aircraft will not be airborne and will not be usable in this circumstance. We also have some F-15 Charlie Eagles based out of Keflavik Naval Air Station in Iceland, and we have some tankers and AWACS too. In terms of the Soviet forces, we have 64 Backfires. With these are the Tu-22M-2 and M-3 models. We also do have quite a few Badgers as well, of various mods, some carrying missiles, some carrying electronic warfare capabilities. We do have some Backfires that are fitted out for reconnaissance purposes, as well as some Bears, and that are also fitted out for that purpose as well. We don't expect the Soviets to really need tankers in this case, but we have included them. And they have also got an airborne early warning aircraft. That's quite back from the battle area. The weather, it is light, high clouds, so that's basically few clouds at 20 to 23,000 feet. No rain, and sea state is 2. So as you can see here, we do have our aircraft basically pushed out a bit far from the carrier battle group here. So this is the combat air patrol we have. We have US Air Force F-15 Charlies armed with a mixture of AMRAAMs and Sparrows. We have our Tomcats armed with 4 Phoenixes each, giving each flight 8 total. They also have Sparrows and Sidewinders for shorter range work. And then we also have some Hornets mixed in. Most are armed only with Sparrows. However, we do have one squadron armed with AMRAAMs as well. We do have our airborne early warning aircraft, the Hawkeyes. We have 2 of those up. And we do also have... we don't actually have any... Here we are. We have our KC-135 tankers, and we do also have an AWACS up. In fact, we have 2 tankers up and an AWACS. And I do believe we also will launch some Prowlers once the battle starts. Coming in over here, there are a lot of Soviet bombers. They are already airborne. And we are going to crack on now, and I'm sure you'll see them appear very quickly. So here we are. What I've done. So any aircraft that comes within this area here will automatically be classed as hostile. This is what you might class as a World War III situation, meaning that any kind of hostile aircraft coming close to a carrier battle group, any kind of unknown aircraft coming close to a carrier battle group we expect to be engaged and classed as hostile. There's not going to be too many civilian flights flying around. So we will send our aircraft in to investigate these. And at this point, with this many unknown aircraft coming in, you'd think there's going to be a lot more aircraft also going in to investigate. As you see, we've got more aircraft launching from the carriers, so we can also send those up. And we've also now got some prowlers airborne, so we can, once they move a bit further away from the carrier, we'll also activate their electronic warfare capabilities, meaning that they can jam the Soviet radars. So this Soviet aircraft here has a big bulge radar active. So command knows that this is a bear of some kind. It doesn't know exactly which one, but it looks like it's going to be a bear D, depending on whether it's a Russian or Soviet one. So again, we know that these are Soviet bears that are coming down. Our aircraft are going to engage. It looks like the F-15s are a bit closer. These F-15s do have conformal fuel tanks fitted, so it does give them a bit longer range. We'll send more aircraft up to go investigate. Yes, here we are. We've got some A6 intruders. These are all armed with buddy refueling pods. So even though this isn't a recreation of Red Storm's Rising, the Dance of the Vampires, it is a fairly similar scenario. It's also fairly similar to a book I've also read recently by an author called T.K. Blackwood, called Black Sea. And again, that has a Soviet backfire raid in. And I believe they use slightly more backfires than I have here, but I think 64 is a good amount, considering that maybe a Soviet attack, like a saturation raid, would have quite a few regiments of backfires. You're probably looking at about 70 aircraft between the regiments, but if you take like maintenance into account, you're probably not going to have quite 70 aircraft, which is why we've gone with 64. So again, our bears are getting closer. We have a different aircraft here. So this is believed to be a backfire, and we believe it's probably one of the reconnaissance ones, the Tu-22MR. At this point, as you can see, there's a lot more aircraft coming in. So even if these are decoys right now, we know that our forces are going to have to launch more aircraft to engage. So we have got quite a few aircraft on Alert 5 status, should be launching fairly shortly. We'll get some more tankers into the air. But as you can see, there's quite a few aircraft that aren't ready to go, and quite a few that are in maintenance. Again, that's simulating the fact that they may be off over Norway, carrying out bombing raids or fighter sweeps over there. So again, the US has kind of been caught with its pants down in this situation, and they've just got to rely on the aircraft that got airborne and have an alert status, and maybe retask a few aircraft that were going to go to Norway to engage with Soviet fighters, now have to defend the carriers. So we have some Hornets coming up here with the Sparrow loadouts, and then we have our F-14s closing in with their Phoenixes. So it looks like they've already shot down a few Soviet aircraft. These Tomcats are now after long-range missiles and now armed only with Sidewinders. So we have bombers. So we don't exactly know which ones these are yet. It just says bombers. They got detected by the AWG-9, which is the Tomcat's long-range radar. So some of our Tomcats are already burning through the fuel. So because enemy bombers have now been detected within our perimeter, so what we're classing as an air defense identification zone in this case, lots more of our fighters are now launching. Another Soviet aircraft was just shot down. Yep, that was a reconnaissance Tu-22 backfire. So these aircraft are now heading for the other aircraft, but we'll turn them back to engage these ones. These are the bombers, these are the higher priority. So we have our Alpha model Tomcats here, but the majority of ones we've got are the Bravo models, such as this squadron here, the Ghost Riders. So it looks like this flight here has launched a Phoenix against what looks like another backfire. Yes, it is another backfire. It's now been PID'd, possibly identified as a backfire. We will speed it up slightly. So at this point, our carrier doesn't have any emissions, it's not emitting any radar or jamming signals. We do obviously have our prowlers up, which are emitting jamming signals, and we do have our Hawkeyes, which also have them. So in this kind of circumstance, we're assuming maybe a Soviet submarine or Soviet satellite has identified the carrier previously, and the Soviet air armada has launched to attack the said carrier. However, this will be a difficult target for the Soviets because there are 2 carriers, and there are also quite a lot of air defense ships, even if there's not enough fighters airborne to shoot down all the incoming bombers or missiles. So here's our first Vampire out. And so the dance begins. Looks like one of our F-15s was shot down by a tail gunner. Might be on a backfire tail gunner. So it looks like our Phoenix was engaging some of the missiles. Yes, these are AS-4 Kitchen Mod 2s, also known as Kilo Hotel 22M anti-ship missiles. Phoenixes can target them, and the police open Sparrows as well if they're in the right launch parameters. And indeed, looks like our Phoenix is doing quite a good job at shooting some of these down. As you can see, some are getting through the defences. Hopefully our AMRAAM-equipped Hornets will be able to engage those. And if they do get past those, then we have our RIM 67 Charlies, which are the SM2 extended range missiles, as well as our SM2 medium range, which we also have copious amounts of. So here you can see the jammers, the Soviet jammers working, which is why we were unable to get an accurate feed on those bombers. So our ships are launching, so here comes some of the RIM 67s. So as you can see, there are now quite a lot of missiles getting through our fighter screen. So this is where our ships will have to cover themselves in glory. Some of our fighters are engaging with some Phoenixes mixed in. Yep, and there's some more RIM 67s. So far they're doing a good job. The question is, will these missiles get through over here? Getting close. This is one of the Oliver Hazard Perry frigates. It's just about managed to protect itself there. I'm not sure if any of the really close defense weapons were needed at that point, but it's certainly getting to that point now. There we go, we've got some more Phoenixes beginning launched against these incoming weapons, as well as some more SAMs. As you can see, these SAMs are data linked from the cruiser here. Here we go, we've got a lot more Soviet missiles coming in. So the overwhelming majority are the AS-4 Kitchen Alpha Mod 2s, but there are also some other weapons, some shorter range one mixed in that some of the backfires are armed with, and some of the Bears may also have. And a few anti-radiation variants as well of those. What I can't seem to find in command are the decoys that apparently the Soviets used in Red Storm Rising. That doesn't mean they aren't in the database, it might just be that I'm not able to find them or use them correctly. So here's another salvo of missiles. Looks like there's quite a few of them here. Will our missiles be able to intercept them? Just splashing of a few vampires, but again, that missile must have been jammed or malfunctioned. Another good hit. At the moment, our force is doing very well. I wouldn't say surprisingly well, because the US Navy, this was one of its jobs in the Cold War, was to shoot down these kind of incoming raids and to defend itself. I mean, we don't know exactly if they've been able to do that. I mean, one of the biggest worries would be perhaps they might be able to absorb an initial raid, but with subsequent raids when they're running low on SAMs, and that would be a lot more difficult. I'll be honest, I don't know exactly how many anti-ship missiles for the backfires the Soviets had. They had quite a lot of them and could use them in subsequent raids, and that obviously becomes a lot more difficult for the NATO navies. looks like there is just another wave of Soviet bombers coming in. These ones, they have some Badgers mixed in there. Those backfires are heading for home. There we are, got some more missiles coming in. At the moment, those ones are about 240 nautical miles out from our fleet. Here comes another wave of missiles. Will our Hornets be able to get there to engage? They're very low on BVR missiles, only one AMRAAM left, so they might not be able to do an awful lot. It might be going a bit fast, but it looks like the Sparrows, yep, looks like the Sparrow did a good job there. Those ones are probably a little bit too far out of position. As you can see, quite a lot of our fighters have burnt through their fuel, so they are now having to return to the tanker. There we go, looks like the missiles are getting close again, but so far our defense ships are doing well. Oh, looks like this frigate its days might be numbered though. Oh, yep, unfortunately we have lost one frigate. And there might be another one about to join it. Oh, and the Spruance class destroyers now taking hits. So these are the backfires firing shorter range missiles, which are faster. And also some of them are anti-radiation missiles, so they have a few more target options. Looks like the USS Long Beach has taken a hit. And that's another Perry-class frigate which has been hit as well. So, although most of our bigger ships have survived, this one is obviously seriously damaged and is also flooding. Looks like our fighters are coming to try and avenge those ships that were damaged or destroyed. Fortunately, backfires, as you may know, are quite fast bombers. They're like Mark II capable aircraft. They're not exactly easy targets, unlike, say, Bears and Badgers, which are not exactly the most difficult or kinematically challenging aircraft to shoot down. I'm not entirely sure why these backfires are deciding to fly into the middle of the American carrier force, but maybe they've got some suicidal tendencies. So at the moment, just to kind of see where we're at, we have lost one frigate outright, and the Soviets have actually lost quite a few bombers, although they probably would have more than enough to launch another raid of backfires. They haven't lost that many of those. It's more the supporting aircraft that have been shot down. And again, this frigate here is lightly damaged. That Spruance class ship that would certainly have to return to a port for repairs, as would the Long Beach. And this ship is probably going to sink. It's almost 100% damaged. But the carriers themselves have survived. I think we've only lost one F-15 Charlie. So the carrier battle group themselves, we've lost a Hornet as well. And we've lost one helicopter. All in all, it's not bad losses. I'm pretty sure the US Navy would probably take those losses against a backfire raid. It's not ideal, but again, considering it was more of a bolt from the blue attack without an awful lot of warning, you can certainly say the Navy has not done a bad job there. So thank you for watching this part of the video, and in the next part of the video what we're going to do is demonstrate what happened if the US Navy was able to get good intelligence and did instead have most of its fighters airborne ready to intercept the raid. So just stay tuned and we'll then roll that scenario shortly. So we have now loaded the scenario with a lot more US aircraft airborne, as you can see here. Otherwise everything is unchanged. Or saying that, I do believe the Soviets now have some MiG-31s also to escort their aircraft. Yes, we've included 16 MiG-31 Foxhounds, but otherwise the actual composition of US and Soviet forces is unchanged. But as you can see, in this circumstance, we've got to imagine that, that as it was during Red Storm Rising, that the Soviets' backfires were detected taking off from their bases, whether that be via satellite or human intel or some of the various sources that are out there. So in this case, the carrier battle group has received advance warning and has managed to scramble most of its aircraft. There are still some aircraft that are down for maintenance, so it's not 100% of aircraft all airborne. And in this, we've kind of going off the assumption that a wave of intruders have just refueled some of the fighters that are airborne. And we do also have some Hawkeyes that obviously don't need to be airborne this time. At the moment, our fighters do currently have their radars off as well. They're staying dark. They're obviously not stealth aircraft. The Soviets also don't really have much in the way of aerial, basically any kind of AWACS close to the battlefield. So they're probably not going to know that this many fighters are airborne waiting to meet them. So as you can see, there's a bear already within range. Our Tomcats are moving in to engage it. As you can see, there are a lot of Soviet bombers and attack aircraft that have been detected on the outskirts of our air defense identification area. So we will start to move up our fighters to investigate. We've got some prowlers here that are already jamming. What I am unsure about is whether or not, if the Soviets ran into this much opposition, they would just abandon their backfire raid and turn around and flee home, or whether they would fancy their chances and then would actually push the attack, even if their reconnaissance aircraft started taking losses. As you can see, I have quite a lot of the intruders here, which have the refueling pods on. And again, we have some prowlers mixed in with them. So we have more Soviet reconnaissance aircraft here. So these are MiG-31 fighters. They're firing their own missiles. I believe they're R-33s. They are not active radar homing, unlike the Phoenix. So the Phoenix does have an advantage against them. And right now, the moment the Phoenix is getting range and send the Foxhound's radar warning receivers haywire, then the MiGs should turn away, and therefore the missile should lose lock on whatever aircraft they've fired on. That's not a guarantee, but hopefully it'll work, and therefore we won't suffer many losses. The good thing as well is the Tomcat is actually a pretty manoeuvrable aircraft, certainly the Bravo models and the ones that came after that, whereas the MiG-31's missiles are more for shooting down bombers and cruise missiles. Same could be said about the Phoenix, but it does seem to have better performance against fighters than the Soviet analog the R-33 does. Of course, those bets will go out the window when you bring into account the later Soviet models like the R-37, but they're not in this battle. So at the moment, our Phoenixes do seem to be doing a very good job. If we look right now, yeah, we've fired 33 Phoenixes, shot down about 10 enemy aircraft, and we haven't lost a single aircraft in return. Certainly a huge advantage of active radar homing missiles versus semi-active. The only problem for the US Navy is that all the Phoenixes they fire at the MiGs is less they can use on the incoming bombers. But we do also have a lot more aircraft airborne this time around, so hopefully that will offset those situations. So we do have some MiG-31s coming in here. They may be able to shoot down an E-2 Hawkeye here, which is a bit annoying. One thing I can also point out is that a lot of our flights of aircraft here have got 4 aircraft in rather than 2. So even if there's not as many blobs of moving around the screen, there's a lot more American aircraft up. Looks like the Hawkeye may have just tried to dodge that. Yes, it did, thankfully. And hopefully that missile, because its firing aircraft's been shot down, won't be able to guide onto our Hawkeye. One thing I have done to conserve fuel is I've made it so the American fighters won't go to afterburner. I mean, I have run a few tests of this, and the problem is if you let them all go to afterburner when they want, it does mean that all your fighters tend to need to go back to the tankers before they can actually engage most of the bombers. So I've had to employ a bit of tactical patience here. Again, with enough intelligence and enough warning, I'd like to think that would be possible. But again, trying to tell pilots to conserve their fuel might not always be the easiest thing to do in the heat of battle. As you can see, we are making a lot of dents in the Soviet force. At the moment, I don't think they've managed to unleash a single vampire against our force. So this is Obviously, how in Red Storm Rising, the US Navy wanted the battle to go, and instead they ended up shooting at decoys, meaning the Soviets could slip in behind them. It looks like quite a lot of Phoenixes have been fired, so now they'll be closing in to use Sparrows and AMRAAMs. It looks at the moment like we've managed to defeat all the western bombers, but the eastern ones are still flowing in. We do have some Tomcats getting close though. There's some enemy jammers, most likely Badgers. Also at this point I'm not sure why the Soviet bombers aren't going to Afterburner. Or they'd maybe set it up so they would if they got close to the American fleet, but it might be they haven't even managed to detect the fleet this time around. But at the moment they're still a good about 330 nautical miles away from the actual carrier battle group, so it's possible their radars haven't actually got a bead on the ships. Yeah, at the moment even this bear hasn't quite got close enough, we don't think, to pick it up. So again, at this point it wouldn't surprise me if in real life all the Soviet bombers would have turned around and ran just because they're all getting massacred. Looks like we have lost a Hornet, or maybe even a couple of Hornets there to enemy fire from the tail guns. But right now the enemy backfires are getting absolutely annihilated. All 16 MiGs were shot down. They fired 56 of those AA-9 Amos, the R-33 missiles, but didn't hit a single American aircraft. Another aircraft's been hit by a tail gun. It's another Hornet. Looks like the Marines are being a little bit trigger happy with their cannons, shall we say, and getting themselves damaged in return. I imagine your fellow pilots would probably give you a fair amount of banter for getting shot down by a bomber's tail gun in the 1990s. Could be wrong, but it seems like you'd have to be a little bit crazy to try and get that close to a tail gun. Here we are, some of the backfires are trying to run away from the missiles, they are engaging their afterburners. At the moment, even this bear has not quite got close enough to pick up the American carrier battle group. I don't think they've had to launch a single SAM yet. And that bear's just been shot down, so it also won't get close enough. Do speed this up and see if any of the Soviets can actually get close enough to engage. At the moment, it doesn't look like it. It looks like this is turning into a turkey shoot for the US Navy. Another Tomcat shot. I think that's the first Tomcat we've lost. Ooh, looks like these bombers might get through. Yeah, it looks like they have launched their missiles, so we have got Vampires inbound. And because our fighters are all out of position, it will likely be up to our SAMs to actually knock these missiles out. See if we can try and get some of the Hornets at least to engage. One thing that may also have played a useful part there is the fact our Prowlers may have been jammed some of the Soviet radars, meaning that they also weren't able to get a lock on our force quite as far out as perhaps they would otherwise have been able to. What we can do now is let our fighters go to Afterburner, because we don't want too many of these missiles getting through. Here come the enemy Vampires. Let's try and see how many they've fired. I count that as about 30 anti-ship missiles inbound. Let's see how many we can shoot down. So the SAMs are engaging. Again, first of all, it's the SM-2 ERs, extended range models. What we can do is I can tell the Arleigh Burke to engage manually.
have got it so the ships won't fire at their longest range setting, just because that can mean that the missile runs out of fuel before the vampire actually is hit. But we also don't want them to fire at too short a range either. There we are. So we have lost one frigate. It is one of the oldest. I think it was the Nox class, therefore one of the older ships in the carrier battle group. These missiles are coming more from the west, or correction, the east. The good thing is the Arleigh Burke class, it does have its vertical launch system, and therefore it can fire off missiles incredibly quickly, like the modern ships can. Same with it, whereas this Ticonderoga class here, this has the Mark 26, which is the missile launchers that do actually take some time to reload. There we are. So yeah, if you're under a heavier saturation attack, then the VLSs are a far more useful system. However, as of when I've recorded this video, I don't believe you can rearm the VLSs at sea, whereas I believe the older missiles like the Mark 26s and the Mark 13s, I believe you could rearm those at sea with rearming ships. But so far, we just check our losses. It has been an absolute triumph so far. We've lost 4 aircraft due to enemy tail guns. We've lost 1 helicopter that was on board the Nox class frigate that was sunk. But otherwise, we haven't sustained any damage apart from that. And we've shot down 31 of the 32 backfires so far. And then we've shot down 26 of the other 32 backfires. And that may get worse for the Soviets yet. Looks like these ones have managed to escape home. But that is it. There's certainly not a lot of Soviet aircrafts that have survived. And if we wanted to, we could probably even send some of our aircraft up here to interdict the Soviets' airborne early warning aircraft and tankers, but I actually think we're probably out of long-range missiles at that. What we will do, we'll speed up the scenario and let our fighters all return to their fueling points and return to base. What our prowlers are doing this far out, I don't know. Maybe I must have moved one of the things accidentally or just sent them out accidentally, but yeah, they also went up to the edge of the battle area. So those are our F-15s. But yeah, I think it's fair to say that was almost a total victory for the US Navy. Yes, we lost 1 ship and 5 aircraft if you include the helicopter. But the Soviets lost many more than that. Even with their fighter escorts, they weren't able to make a dent on our F-14s or F-A-18s. And that would be a huge success for the US Navy. And I think the Soviets maybe had, 300 or 400 backfires at most through their entire Navy and Air Force. So we'd have probably destroyed maybe 10 to 20% of that. So again, very good day for the US Navy, very bad day for the Soviet Union. And I do appreciate you watching this video. Please do like and subscribe if you like this. And we will actually be recording another video with how a more modern US Navy carrier group would survive against this backfire strike, both with hypersonics and with non-hypersonic weapons. So thank you for watching and have a great day.